Good morning. Thanks for being here. You're going to need a strap, some blocks, and blankets today. Some wall space is also going to be helpful for more support. Let's go ahead and get started in a nice, comfortable seated posture. You can go ahead and start in Sukhasana today. Sukha means sweet or easy pose, and here the ankles are crossed and the knees drape off to the sides. If you take a moment and look at your seated posture, you should be able to verify what kind of angle your thighs are at in relationship to the floor. Usually when the hips are tight or the inner groins and our thighs are tight, you're going to notice that there's kind of this steeping upward angle from the hips to the knees. Ultimately, we want to try and support our hips enough so that the thighs become more parallel to the floor. So if you are observing your legs and feel that you need a little bit more support under the hips to make that happen, I can go ahead and grab that. And as we sit a little bit higher and have the thighs more parallel to the floor, it actually drops our center of gravity towards our pelvis, and it makes it a little bit easier to sit up tall. It becomes less effort to lift the spine away from the hips. As you take a few breaths here, nice gentle inhales and exhales. Go ahead and bring your hands, your fingertips to the sides of the hips. With the elbows moving and pulling back to the wall behind you, notice if there's tension in the sides of the neck and the tops of the shoulders. And see if you can actually start to spread across the chest. Draw the shoulders away from the ears while the elbows pull back behind you. Now, these next few breaths, really try to focus your inhale and exhale into the sides of the rib cage. See if you can observe that sensation as you inhale, the expanding in the sides of the ribs. Notice how it starts to contract as you exhale. As you breathe, notice if through your breath the chest is dropping, if the shoulders are rolling forward. And as you move through the inhale and exhale, see if you can still keep that draw of the shoulders back and down, along with that general lift of the chest. Lift in the front of the armpits. Allow your eyes to soften and close, letting go of any tension that might be held across the forehead, between the eyebrows, maybe even in the jaw. On your next inhale, bring the hands together in Namaskar, prayer pose. Here, the wrists rest at the base of the rib cage. The thumb reaches up towards the heart and has contact quite close to the sternum. As the elbows lift slightly, you'll feel how the palms rest against each other and how there's a little bit of a resistance created with that pressure in the palms. With that gentle pressure, see if you can encourage the upper arms to roll back to the wall behind you and the front of the armpits to lift. Soften any tension that might be held in the thighs. We'll start class today by chanting 3 Oms together as a group. You're welcome to just sit back and listen. Let's go ahead and start with an inhale. Ah. Notice if any tension started to rise anywhere specifically in the body. Acknowledge if it's supporting tension, such as maybe this lift in the side waists and roll the shoulders back. Start to discern if there was any unnecessary tension, perhaps in the back of the neck, across the face, or in the jaw. And see if you can let go and start to release that unnecessary tension. Keeping the shoulders rolling back, chest lifting. At the end of your next exhale, bring your chin down to the chest, surrendering the head to the heart, intellect to intuition. Relax the hands on the thighs, and on your next inhale, slowly lift your head and open the eyes. All right, let's observe which leg is closest to us, and we'll switch the cross of the legs. Still in Sukhasana, sweet or easy pose. And then we're going to move into Parvatasana, little mountain pose. So let's go ahead and do this together. Lacing the fingers, we're going to press the palms away from us. So the palms turn away, arms straighten, and we'll take the arms up and overhead. But if you notice any pinching or tension happen in the shoulders, you can go ahead and keep the arms a little bit lower where they feel comfortable. Ultimately, we want to feel that the inner arms are turning back. So the area of our arm that's closest to our ears is turning back to the wall behind us, while the outer arms turn forward. Sometimes we also need to start really engaging that top of the shoulder, that deltoid muscle, and rolling it back and down the spine. So I can keep my shoulders quite high to my ears and attempt to turn the inner arms in, outer arms out. However, we want the whole shoulder to start to pull back and down the spine, creating some space between the tops of the shoulders and the ears. And then bringing the hands down. Notice which pinky is on the loose end, and we'll switch the cross of the fingers and press the palms away. Taking the arms up and overhead for Parvatasana. As you press your legs down towards the floor, lift the chest up, and then make these adjustments in the shoulders. Inner arms turn back, outer arms roll forward, pulling that top of the shoulder back and down the spine. As you take a few breaths here, let go of any tension in the face or the eyes, so that the gaze becomes quite soft. And then bring the hands down, sitting up nice and tall. Just do a brief seated twist here. So twisting off to the left, try to keep the legs moving towards the floor. So as we pull in our twist, we might use one hand to pull on the thigh to rotate our rib cage. But instead of lifting that knee up or lifting that thigh up, try and press it down to the floor. And then moving back through center, twisting off to the right, pressing that thigh down to the floor as we lift the chest up. We'll do some more twisting as class goes on, and we'll come back to center. It's really just to get us started today. So now you can clear your mats off and have a strap. Go ahead and place a loop in your strap. And then I'll show you where we're headed today so that we can go ahead and do together. So I'm just getting a loop ready in my strap. All right, so let's see, I'm gonna have to move this just a little bit here. Okay, so we're gonna practice a couple of different poses and we'll move from them. First is gonna be Urdhva Prasarada Padasana, and then Supta Padangustasana, and then we'll do Jathara Parivartanasana. So Urdhva Prasarada Padasana, upward extended foot pose. We're gonna use the strap. It's quite nice to have the tail end. I know my strap is black, so it might be hard to see, but this little tail end, if I were to pull it, should be pulling down to the floor. I'm gonna start by placing it under my armpits, so under my arms here, and across my upper back quite high. Now, if you have a short strap, then you might need to use two, or honestly, you could just ditch the strap entirely if it's not long enough, because it looks like I might be getting to a place where mine might not be long enough. But the intention would be that I shift the buckle off to the side, bring my feet in. Yeah, mine have a different strap that I would have to tie onto this. So if you have another strap that would fit, the aim would be to get it over the feet and it's across the upper back here in Urdhva Prasarita Padasana. Since that's not happening with me today, I'm going to be practicing without one. I invite you to decide which version would be best for you if it's possible to use the strap. From Urdhva Prasarita Padasana, I'm actually going to grab one of my big toes, or this is where you could use your strap without it across the upper back. And I'm bringing my other leg down to the floor. I'm going to clear myself away from the wall so that I do have some freedom to lift that leg up and down. Here we are in Supta Padangustasana 1. Then leg out to the side, then back to center, and then bringing that other leg up. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. Supta Padangustasana 1, keeping that foot down. My lifted leg goes off to the side for Supta Padangustasana 2, or reclined big toe pose. Padangustasana is big toe. And bringing that foot back up, hands off to the side, knees towards the chest, Jasara Parivartanasana, or the belly churning pose. I'm squeezing my thighs together, and then I'm going to try and reach my knees up towards my armpits here. Going from side to side, I am aiming to keep my thighs off the floor. We'll do this 3 times, going from side to side. At first, I'm not taking my legs off very far, but then the second and third time, I'm going to try and increase that twist, still squeezing the thighs, still trying to draw them up towards my arm, not letting the thighs touch the floor. And then feet to the floor, and we'll come up and we'll move into Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. Okay, so that's where we're headed. So you can have if you have a long enough strap, placing it across the upper back to the feet. If it's not long enough, you can have it nearby for Supta Padangustasana. So let's get started. You can start laying on your mat. Make sure that you have enough space away from the wall. You can bend the knees, take your feet and press them up towards the ceiling. So now the heels are over the hips. You can use your strap, lace them around the heels. And here in Urdhva Padasana, Urdhva Prasarita Padasana, make sure that the arms are straight, legs are straight. And as you give a gentle pull on the strap, notice what the shoulders are doing. You have the floor behind you to give you some feedback on whether they're moving towards the chest, or if you can actually start to pull them down towards the floor and away from the ears. It's nice when laying on the mat because it gives you a sense of what's happening in the back of the body. As you take a few breaths here, shoulders roll back and down, chest lifts up. So the fronts of the armpits are still lifting away from the tops of the thighs. We're taking a few breaths. So you inhale and exhale, just observe what the chest is doing and what the abdomen is doing. When we breathe normally and we're not necessarily trying to take a form or make a shape with the body, usually the belly and the chest will breathe, will start to move and descend in harmony with each other. But here as you breathe, see if you can use your inhale to lift the chest up and keep that lift as you exhale and draw the belly button in towards the spine. So inhale, chest is lifting, collarbones broadening. Exhale, belly button in towards the spine. And so just observe that general shape. And we don't want to cause any unnecessary tension in the body or in the face as we do this. So you can be gentle as you experiment and practice this on your own. But really we're looking to keep the side waists long, sides of the neck, tops of the shoulders long. So just observing how we can move the breath to help aid that shape. Now moving into Supta Padangustasana 1. You can go ahead and take your right foot out of the strap. If your backs of the legs are flexible enough, you can even grab onto your big toe. Left foot stays lifted, right leg comes down to the floor. Supta Padangustasana 1. Now you have to take your mind into your feet As you press into your big toe ball mounts, press into your inner heels, try to make the legs stick straight here. Deep inhalation, deep exhalation. And then we'll take that left leg off to the side for Supta Padangusthasana 2. A general rule of thumb is that once we move into Supta Padangusthasana 2, you want to actually try and lift that leg a little bit closer towards your arm. So often, if we have the foot a certain distance from our hand while in Supta Padangusthasana 1, we can actually walk our hand up the strap a little bit more for Supta Padangusthasana 2. Now we're not bringing that left leg to the floor. Instead, we want to focus on keeping the right side of the body on the floor. So you take a nice deep exhale, draw the left side of your abdomen over to the right. So you're trying to create a more firm pressure and grounding on that right side of the body. And then bringing that leg back to center, bringing the right leg back up. Urdhva Prasarita Padasana. And switching sides, grabbing onto the right big toe or looping the strap around that toe ball mount on the right leg. And then left foot comes down to the floor. Bringing your mind into your feet, into the legs, try and press through the big toe ball mount, press through the inner heel, and straighten the legs completely. On an exhale, drawing the right side of the belly to the left, take the right leg off to the side. We can really use our breath here to help anchor that left side of the body. Notice if the legs want to bend, or if you're losing that pressure through the big toe ball mount, that stretch through the inner heel. And during these last few breaths, just observe what the shoulders are doing. If there's any adjustment that you feel you can make, go ahead and integrate it here. And then coming back to center, both legs back up. We'll do each side one more time. So Urdhva Prasarita Padasana. This is a great support for strength in the abdomen. And grabbing onto the left big toe or looping the strap around the left foot. Bring your right leg down to the floor. Supta Padangusthasana 1, both legs straight. Now notice here for a moment if that left hip is trying to lift up towards your armpit. And instead, see if you can actually hook that outer left hip away from you, almost as if you could pull it towards your right heel, that heel that's on the floor. And then taking the left leg off to the side, still attempting to keep that left side of the body nice and long. So from the top of the thigh, the pit of the thigh, to the armpit becomes quite spacious. Taking a few breaths here in Supta Padangusthasana 2. And coming back to center, both legs up, grabbing onto the right big toe or looping onto the right foot. Legs straight, left leg down to the floor. Pressing out through the big toe ball mounts, inner heels. And as you hook that outer right hip away from you, roll the shoulders back. Take the right leg off to the side. Supta Padangusthasana 2. You press the right thigh away from you, lift the chest up. Notice how keeping that right leg straight and actively trying to press that hip, press that thigh away, gives you a little bit of access to hooking that outer right hip away from you. And then back to center. Both legs up, hands to the floor, and you'll reach your arms out along the sides of the shoulders. If you have any shoulder tension or pain, you can even have the wrists a little bit more in line with the armpit, at the base of the armpit, so that they're not higher than the shoulders. If you have any neck tension or shoulder tension, having the wrists higher than the shoulders will definitely add some agitation. Then we're going to bend our knees, heels to the buttocks, knees towards the chest. We're moving into the belly churning pose. Jathara Parivartanasana. So we're gonna move from side to side a couple of times, specifically 3 times. And as you move side to side these first 3 times, you don't have to worry about taking the legs off to the side. But what I want you to focus on is squeezing the thighs together and keeping the knees lifting up towards your arm. Taking the knees off to the left, squeezing the thighs, taking them up towards the arm, and then come back to center. Now we're gonna do 3 more times. And these next 3 times, see if you can go a little bit deeper, but keep the thighs off the floor. So turning off to the right, thighs squeeze, heels or knees come in towards the armpit, and then to the left, knees squeeze together, knees lift to the arm, and then to the right 2 more times. Now try and hook your outer right hip away as you take the legs off to the right. So still trying to keep that right side of the body long as you draw the knees in towards the arm, and then off to the left, hooking that outer left hip away as the knees draw in towards the arm. Belly turning pose. 2 more times. So thighs together, outer right hip hooks away, knees come up to the arm as we turn off to the right. Last side, last time, legs to the left, outer left hip hooks away as the knees lift up towards the arm. And then back to center, and you can bring your feet down to the floor for a moment. And taking the right arm up and overhead, and roll to the side. Come into Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. So hands are slightly forward from the shoulders, knees slightly back from the hips. Curl the toes under, lift the hips up. You can take the feet wide, so as wide as your mat today. With the heels lifted for a moment, see if you can turn your inner heels, inner thighs back, outer thighs turn forward towards the floor. So what you'll notice in your feet is the heels kind of kick out from the toes slightly. And as those inner thighs turn back to the wall behind you, try and lift the hips, lift the sit bones up. There is some action in the legs to keep that lift of the thighs, lift of the hips. As you press the palms down, notice which areas of your palms are light. Often we press quite heavy into the heel of the palm, that area of the palm that's near our wrist. See if you can press into the fingers. See if you can press into the knuckles of the fingers more than the heel of the palm. And then come down to rest. Knees wide, toes together, sitting back in Adho Mukha Virasana, or you can rest in the tabletop position if the knees are bothered by this. Okay, so you can push yourself up. I'm going to demonstrate where we're headed next. So my knees are a little bit tender when it comes to pressing or resting on the floor. So I'm going to have a blanket nearby. And if your knees tend to bother with that pressure, I would recommend having it. 1 or 2 blankets are going to be helpful for this. I'm going to unfold it once from what we call a shelf fold and place it in the middle of my mat. I'm going to demonstrate where we're headed and then we'll do together. So I'm going to start in Adho Mukha Svanasana. Knees are on the blanket, hands are slightly forward from the shoulders, knees are slightly back from the hips. Curling the toes under, lifting the hips up. Necklace is in the way. Adho Mukha Svanasana. Then I'm going to bring my hands over slightly so I can step my left foot forward. So now I'm in this low lunge. You might notice that blocks will help you in this position. The arms are along the inner thigh here for this low lunge position. Then I'm going to bring my knee to the floor. I'm going to point my toes back. Now, the stiffer the front of your ankle is, the more support you might want under that knee so that your whole shin is supported. Really, when the ankle becomes tense, the pressure shifts to the knee. From here, I'm going to lift up. Deep exhale. Belly draws in towards the spine, lifting the chest up, and then we'll reach the arms up and overhead. And we'll come into a little twist, back to center, moving into that low lunge, and then Adho Mukha Svanasana. Okay, so I'll do the other side, just a quick demonstration. Now my right foot steps forward, low lunge, arms along the inner knee, left knee comes to the floor, toes point. Deep exhale, belly in, reaching the arms up, kind of like a supported Virabhadrasana 1, warrior 1 pose. And then exhaling and twisting towards the bent knee that's forward. Coming back to the floor, returning to a low lunge and stepping that foot back. Adho Mukha Svanasana with the feet wide. Then we come down to rest. Adho Mukha Virasana, or you can just rest here with the feet on the floor, hands under the shoulders, and take a few breaths. Okay, that's where we're headed. So you might find that the maybe more than one blanket will be helpful for you. You can go ahead and grab that, and we'll get started. So hands slightly forward from the shoulders, knees slightly back from the hips. Curling the toes under, lift your hips up. And take the feet wide. And you can scoot your hands over to the right, because we're going to take that left foot forward, low lunge. Looking to have that left knee over the heel. Try to straighten that back leg. This is where you might notice that blocks are going to be helpful for you. And you're going to take that right leg down to the floor, point the toes back so that you can press your whole shin down. We don't want just that right knee to take the pressure. We want that pressure to be dissipated across the entire shin. So if it's heavy on that knee still, you can grab an extra blanket really quickly, because then we're going to come up into Virabhadrasana 1, supported with the knee on the floor. So you can press your hand on that left knee, lift the chest up. Now, before you take the arms up and overhead with the hands on the hips, see if you can slide your front foot back towards your right thigh, and see if you can try and lift your right thigh forward towards that left foot. So overall, there's this resistance that's created as you try and bring the legs together, pinching the thighs together. And then reach the arms up and overhead. You can have the hands wider than the shoulders if the shoulders are uncomfortable. So take a few breaths here, sliding that left foot back, trying to pull that right thigh forward. On your next exhale, twist off to the left. So we're twisting towards that front knee, turning the rib cage around. Coming back to center, hands on the floor, curl the right toes under, low lunge position here. Left foot moves back. Wide-legged Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. You can shift your hands so that you can step the right foot forward. Low lunge. Making sure that that right knee is directly over the heel, not over the toes. Trying to straighten that left leg. And then left leg comes to the floor. Point the toes back. Now, as you come up to an upright position, see if you can exhale, draw the abdomen in. And once you're pulling the abdomen in, that's going to help you lift up to an upright posture. Hands on the hips. Just take a moment to focus on the legs here. Sliding that left thigh forward, right foot back. So there's this resistance as if you're trying to squeeze the thighs together. It's really that scrubbing of the right foot back that's going to give you a little bit more of that sensation in the right leg since that knee is bent forward. And then reach the arms up and overhead. Still scrubbing the legs towards each other. As you exhale, twist off to the right. And then coming back to center, hands to the floor, curling the left toes under, low lunge, and then right leg moves back. Straighten the legs. You can have the heels lifted off the floor, but try to make the legs stick straight here. Lifting the hips up, pressing into the palms, Adho Mukha Svanasana. And then coming down to rest. Knees wide, toes together, or you can rest in that tabletop position. Okay, so now you know kind of essentially what a variation is for what we're going to do next. This next time, we are going to come into a traditional Virabhadrasana 1 with the back heel lifted. So if you feel a little bit tired or you'd like to continue with that version with the leg on the floor, you can go ahead and do so. So you know the variation now. And I'm going to demonstrate where we're headed if you felt comfortable with what we were doing. So we're going to come into this setup, this vinyasa. Vinyasa is a yoga flow where you're moving from one pose to another pose to another pose, and you're kind of flowing between them. So we're practicing a vinyasa here. From Adho Mukha Svanasana, left foot forward, low lunge. Now from here, I'm gonna come up into Virabhadrasana 1. Legs have to be strong, abdomen draws in, reaching the arms up and overhead here as I try and straighten that back leg. So you can have that shin on the floor if it's more comfortable, or we're practicing Virabhadrasana 1. And then hands down, foot back, Adho Mukha Svanasana, and then the other side. Virabhadrasana 1. Coming to fingertips, you can even press on that thigh on the front leg, but we're really looking for a deep exhale as we draw the belly in and back, in and back. Should feel difficult to straighten that back leg. So you come into Virabhadrasana 1. Okay, back heel lifted. Okay, so you kind of know what your options are for this next round. And we'll come down to rest. Yes.
When we come up into the pose, are we still trying, even though we're on our back toe, are we still trying to pull our thighs together and scrub our front leg back?
Yes.
I've noticed a big difference in my back when I do that.
Good. Yeah, absolutely.
It's much more helpful for me. But so what do we do with our back toes then? If we're on our toes in the back, how do I pull that forward different than when I was on my knees?
So it'll be from a very, very similar place. Essentially what you might have felt with when you were on your knee or your shin was that inner thigh was a little bit more helpful and sensational really in getting that back leg to pull forward. And it's very similar here, that instead of worrying so much about the feet coming together, we want to start to feel and access the thighs coming together, because that's really where the strength is coming from. It's kind of like a pair of scissors, right? Right at the top where the scissors join and they slip together, right? There's the most contact. That's really where the strength is coming from. And so that's kind of what we're thinking about here, is just squeezing and pinching the thighs towards each other. The feet become helpful just as a point of, focus and reflection. But ultimately, as you even focus on trying to take those back toes forward, it's almost this like you're trying to, lift them forward or scrub them forward as you press your heel back. You're still going to feel more of the sensation in your thighs. So as you think about your back foot, it's really about scrubbing those toes forward as you stretch back through the heel. It's when the heel drops in or drops out that you're not going to necessarily have as much focus on the sensation in the thighs. So we're not necessarily trying to get the heels to the floor, but you're going to muscularly engage that as you try and stretch back while pulling and slipping the toes forward. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, yeah, great point. That's absolutely, it's wonderful to hear that you felt some help with your low back in that I got that from, there's this thing called a foundations course, and it's all about healing low back pain. And that's a big thing that they talk about. It's getting this resistance of squeezing the thighs together when your thighs are separate from each other. And it's pretty incredible. It's helped me dramatically, but a couple of people with significant low back pain from SBG Gym has really found benefit in it. So thanks for bringing that up, Tommy.
Yeah, I remember that from your spine class. So
yeah,
thanks.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, yes, that's exactly right. So we're trying to bring the thighs together still. All right, everyone. So you can pick which version is best for you, whether you want to come down to the shin or you're ready for Virabhadrasana 1 today. Let's go ahead and start by coming up into Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog. Now we're going to start by taking that left foot forward, right foot back. Now with that left leg, see if you can really get that knee to a 90-degree angle. And even here, see if you can squeeze the thighs towards each other. It's helpful on that front foot. You have the pressure of your whole left foot into the floor, but see if you can almost try and scrub and hook your back toes forward with that leg straight. We are stretching out through that right heel, the back heel, as we try and scrub those toes forward towards us. Then taking a nice deep exhale, see if you can pull yourself upright. If you're bringing the shin to the floor, that's great. And then reach the arms up and overhead. Virabhadrasana 1, squeezing the thighs together, sliding the feet towards each other. Beautiful. And then hands down, low lunge. Adho Mukha Svanasana. Downward facing dog. Taking a breath here. And moving to the other side. Right foot forward, left foot back. Squeezing the thighs towards each other, stretching out through that left heel. Virabhadrasana 1 on a nice deep exhale. See if you can draw the abdomen in, lift yourself upright. Still trying to squeeze the thighs towards each other, scrubbing the feet towards one another, and reaching the arms up and overhead. Softening the shoulders away from the ears. And hands down. From this low lunge, step that foot back. Adho Mukha Svanasana. And then coming down to rest. Very nice. Strengthen the legs. So now we're going to move to a seated posture, taking the legs wide. So you can have how many blankets you need to sit on so that the spine, so that the back is comfortable as we take the legs off to the sides. I like to face the long edge of my mat so that I can reference where my heels are in space in relationship to my hips. I'm taking a few breaths here. You sit up nice and tall and take the hands behind you. Elbows bend to the back wall. Now you can watch for a moment. I'll show you where we're headed. We're going to do a little bit more movement today. So I'm trying to reach out towards my toes, turning my rib cage to face that straight leg that I'm reaching towards. And every time I'm thinking about how can I lift my chest up? How can I keep myself a little bit more upright while I reach towards my toes? So I'm not too worried about this rounding of the back just so you can get to the toes. Instead, I want you to feel like you can sit upright, and we're just practicing reaching the hand out to the side. So let's do this a couple of times, say 5 times. So starting with the right, pretty quick, then reaching to the left, back to the right, to the left. So I'm not worried about how long you stay there, really just getting some movement, focusing on lifting the chest up. Now these last 2 times, think about pushing the hip down, the thigh down, that you're moving away from. So if you're off to the left, press the right hip down. Off to the right, press the left hip down. Just a few more times so you can get the feeling of anchoring that hip down. So now we're upright, trying to anchor that hip that we're moving away from. Very nice. And then back to center, sitting up nice and tall. So now we're going to do something similar, but we're doing a side lean. So as I have my left forearm on my thigh, I'm going to reach the right arm up and overhead, and then moving off to the right, right forearm to the thigh, and then to the left. So again, a little bit more movement here today. We're not holding as long in each position, but as we move, we're going to be able to feel that shift of pressure in the hips. And again, we're still wanting that pressure in the hip that we're leaning away from. So if you're leaning off to the right, pressing into the left hip, leaning off to the left, pressing into the right hip. We're starting to build a little bit of a connection with the different sides of the body, different sides of the brain here. So we stretch over to the right, pressing into the left leg. Taking a few breaths. As you move, inhaling as you come up, exhaling, move to the side, or you can find what feels best for you. But just make sure to breathe. And then coming back up to center. Very nice. I'll do that. We'll do those aspects a little bit different now. So I'm going to start reaching over and facing my left leg. Then I'm going to fan across here and lean over to the right. Coming back up to center, reaching over to the right, fanning across, lifting the arm up over to the left, coming back up, reaching towards the left, fanning across to the right, reaching the left arm up and overhead. Okay, so we're starting with that forward bend, chest upright, moving into like making a rainbow out in front of us. And this is where that pressure in the hips changes. First, I'm pressing into my right hip, and then as I start to fan across, I'm shifting that pressure into the opposite hip, into the hip that I'm leaning away from, left hip, and then reaching the arm up and overhead. Okay, you can keep your forearm on your thigh, or if you feel comfortable practicing this, you can even bring your forearm to the floor here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this together. Start by leaning off to the right. We'll start a little bit slower. Leaning to the right, pressing into the left hip. Now as you fan across in front of you, notice how now that right hip starts to press down. Left arm comes to the thigh. Reach the right arm up and overhead. And then we come up and turn around. So even coming up has a little bit of movement to it. Coming up, sit bones even out, turning towards that left leg now. Right arm reaches to the left leg. Fanning across. Feel that shift in your hips, pressing into the left hip more now as we move to the right. So you can notice and just do this rainbow action once or twice. As you lean to the left, right hip, right sit bone presses. You start to lean to the right, left hip, left sit bone presses. And now here we are in Parivrita Upavista Konasana, reaching the left arm up and overhead. 2 more times. Now with the chest upright, reaching the left fingers towards the right foot, fanning across, pressing the hips, first from left to right, leaning off to the left, reaching the right arm up and overhead. There's a lot of lefts and rights here. Really focus on whichever hip you're leaning away from, that you're not very close to, is where we bring the pressure. Coming up right, turning off to the left, right hip presses, fan across to the right. So now the left hip presses. Parivrita Upavista Konasana. Coming up right, each side one more time. Chest upright, reaching to the right. Bring your arm over to the left. Reach the right arm to the left. Coming up right. Reaching to the left leg. Fanning across. Reaching the left arm up and overhead. See if you can touch the right foot. And then coming back up. Very nice. To Baddha Konasana, we can come in a couple of ways. So if your knee is feeling a little bit tender, start by lifting it straight up to the ceiling, foot flat on the floor, and then you can hold onto your ankle and take that knee off to the side. If the legs are feeling quite comfortable, you can hook underneath the thigh near the knee and just swing that ankle in. Bottoms of the feet together for Baddha Konasana as we sit up nice and tall. We got a little bit of movement in the side waist and the sides of the spine. And you can go ahead and come off of your support. Set the blankets off to the side, grab your blocks. We're gonna set up for Pincha Mayurasana, peacock feather pose. So talked about having enough support or space between the wrists to mimic the space between the shoulders. So in Pincha Mayurasana today, if you've been practicing, you're familiar with this pose, you're welcome to go into the inversion. I'm gonna stay with my feet on the floor and demonstrate that version so it's a little bit easier for me to talk through today. You're gonna use your blocks to create some space between the palms. We're gonna do we'll go through 3 versions of Pincha Mayurasana. The first version has the hands in fists. So the outside of the fist, the outer wrist is actually pinning the sides of the block, kind of like this. The second time that we practice, we're gonna have the palms open and facing the block. Then the third time, we're gonna practice a more traditional position. This is where the palms are flat on the floor. We're really just using the blocks to give us some feedback if the hands start to slip. So initially, the hands aren't really touching the blocks. The thumbs might touch, but the fingers are away from the block, and it's really just a guide in case the hands start to pull in towards each other, that you feel the block's resistance and you feel how the block is there. So first time, hands and fists, top of the hands down on the floor. Second round, palms face the block. Third round, palms to the floor. All righty, so you can decide if you are going to be going upside down today. You can practice in the center of the room, or you can practice up against the wall. I'm going to demonstrate just here on my mat with my hips lifting up so that I can kind of discuss what we're up to as we do this. So some very important aspects and benefits of Pincha Mayurasana, first and foremost, is we get some strength in the arms. Really, the biceps and the triceps, or the back of the arm, have to engage in this position. We also get a little bit more strength in the deltoid, the top of the shoulder. So I'll demonstrate just really briefly, and then we'll go ahead and get started. If you feel comfortable with all of this, and this is all stuff you're familiar with, then you're welcome to go ahead and get going on your own. So I have the blocks wide enough so that they are as wide and broad as my shoulders. When I have my wrists along the outsides of the blocks, I can see my elbows are directly underneath my shoulder joint here. So you can adjust your blocks in different ways to get what support, what space might work best for you. Sometimes one block works if we have a little bit more narrow shoulders, but the broader your shoulders are, the more space you're gonna wanna have. So first time, hands and fists, knees are back slightly so that they're under the hips, and I have my forearms on the floor. I'm trying to squeeze the block, squeeze the elbows in, curling the toes up and lifting the hips towards the ceiling. Now, while I'm here, I can do this pumping action. So I'm taking my shoulders forward and then pressing them back. Shoulders forward, pressing them back. While I'm doing this, I'm trying to keep that squeeze of the elbows, turning the inner arms towards the blocks, outer arms towards the floor, and then we'll hold here. Pressing the chest towards the floor, trying to press the chest towards the toes. So the shoulders are not directly over the elbows in this, okay? And then switching to the palms, same thing. We're gonna do the chest pumps, and then once the hands are on the floor, same situation. I'm pumping my chest towards my heels, trying to get my inner arms turning forward while my forearms are turning down towards the floor. I'll explain a little bit more once we get to that. So let's go ahead and get started. Hands and fists, back of the hands, back of the forearms are on the floor. Elbows underneath the shoulders. Curl your toes under, lift the hips up. Now just rock your shoulders forward and back. You do this by pressing the back of the forearm down, trying to squeeze and press your shoulder back. Really a lot of deltoid action here, bicep action. So front of the arm you're gonna feel is quite active. Moving the shoulders forward and back. Then try and hold, reaching your chest towards the toes, lifting the hips up nice and tall. Go ahead and let your head hang. So you wrap the outer arms down to the floor. Try and squeeze the elbows. Squeeze the block between the fists. And then come down, knees to the floor. You can sit upright. Taking a breath here. And let the arms be soft. It can be quite a nice arm workout if this is something that you don't practice regularly. Now palms come to the outside of the block. Elbows underneath the shoulders. Knees under the hips, curl your toes under, lift the hips up, and rock the shoulders back and forth. Now, if you feel any pinching or pain, first thing I would check is to make sure that your blocks are wide enough. Second thing is maybe just do little micro movements. See if you can observe if the shoulders are lifting towards the ears, or if you can keep those shoulders pulling away from the ears and down the back. So shifting the shoulders forward and back, and then reaching the chest towards the toes. Scrubbing the razor edge of the forearm, outer wrist down on the floor, and then come down to rest. Very nice. So now this last time that we're going to practice, again, you can go upside down on your own. Palms come flat to the floor. Now what shifts here is that there's a little bit of a different intelligence that has to come into the arm. Although my upper arm is externally rotating and turning away from my body, my forearm is actually turning in to the midline. You're going to feel that that inner thumb pad or that inner wrist wants to lift when we're externally rotating the arm. So upper arm is externally rotating, forearm is wrapping in and down towards the thumb. Okay, so you can even play with this here before putting any weight on it. See if you can observe turning that upper arm out while the thumb presses down on the floor, while that whole forearm tries to lengthen out through that thumb. And then eventually we start to build a connection between the pressure of the palm and how that pressure of the palm creates an external rotation in the upper arm. You may or may not be feeling that today, but just kind of have your sights on that, but that's where we're headed. That as you press that right thumb or that whichever hand you're using, as you press that thumb down into the floor, can you still externally rotate that upper arm? Okay, so now we're going to add some weight. If you feel that this is just too foreign to you, it doesn't make sense how you're able to externally rotate the upper arm, then you can just rest here and kind of play with that for a moment without bringing more weight to the arms. However, if you feel like you're ready for a challenge, you're feeling a little bit more comfortable with all of this practice, then you can curl the toes under, lift the hips up. As the forearms scrub, palms press down into the floor. See if you can squeeze the elbows in, turning the outer arms down to the floor, really getting those shoulders active. And then you can start to pump the shoulders again, taking the shoulders forward and back, forward and back, forward and back, and then ending with the chest towards the toes. Some of you might feel comfortable even looking between the elbows. If not, you could just let the head hang, but eventually we're going to head to a place in our practice of looking between the elbows for Pincha Mayurasana. Externally rotating the upper arms as the thumb presses down on the floor, and then come down to rest. You might feel like the arms are fatigued, the shoulders are a little bit fatigued, which we often will feel, especially if we have neck tension or the tops of the shoulders and upper back is quite tight. Generally, the trapezius muscle, this giant muscle that's across the upper back and the back of the neck, this gets very, very tense when our arms are weak. And so we might go through life lifting stuff, interacting with our world, but instead of our arms working, what happens? The trapezius works. The upper back is working to lift those things. And so instead, we really want to get the arms working and some length in the trapezius. So this is a beautiful, wonderful, wonderful practice to start getting some more strength in the biceps, the triceps, and the deltoid, that top of the shoulder. I absolutely love Pincha Mayurasana, and it's greatly helped my headstand, my Shirshasana. We're actually, because of time, we're going to move into shoulder stand. So Salamba Sarvangasana or Setu Bandha Sarvangasana to form a bridge pose. There's a couple of options. If you're familiar with shoulder stand and you have all the props to do that, then I invite you to go ahead and get into your shoulder stand, whether it's in the center of the room or whether it's up against the wall, which has been one of my favorite versions to practice more recently. If you're in the center of the room and you're wanting a variation for shoulder stand, then you have one pose with two different types of support that's possible to practice with today. One is a little bit more active. It's going to be a little bit more of an effortful back bend. I'd recommend it if you're kind of needing some energy for the rest of your day. Then you'll want to practice Setu Bandha with a block. But if you're feeling really fatigued, I know today's class was definitely a little bit more work, definitely a little bit more active. You're going to need some more props for this supported Setu Bandha, but you can use a couple of blankets and some blocks under your feet. I'm just unfolding my blankets once from shelf fold and then folding them lengthwise. So I get this nice narrow stack of blankets here. And then you're going to need somewhere to put your feet You're welcome to rest them on the floor, or if you have some blocks nearby, you can line those up on the short edge. So I know I've demonstrated Setu Bandha with just a block before underneath the tailbone. So I'll just very briefly demonstrate the more restorative version, and then I myself am going to practice with the block while I kind of talk you guys through as we end class. So with the more supported version, a couple of things to note is that as we sit on the blanket stack and lay back, it's nice to start with the head off the blankets and then the shoulders on top of it. Because then as you slowly, centimeter by centimeter, start to scoot the shoulders to the floor, you can get this curl of the shoulders back so that the tops of the shoulders actually have a little bit more of a trajectory and aim to touching the floor. Then from here, you can straighten the legs, find your blocks, see if they need to be pressed away from you a little bit more so that they support the heels, and you can make those adjustments there. So this is the more supported Setu Bandha variation. If you're feeling pretty fatigued today, this is where we'll head. And then to come out, you can simply press your body off of the blanket stack or lift your hips and shift the blankets out from underneath you. Okay, so I hope that you have an idea of what you're practicing today for what's best for your body. Salamba Sarvangasana, shoulder stand, is, you know, the ideal that we want to get to, but I know that we did a lot of work today and some might not have the props to do that. So moving into Setu Bandha with the block, I have my toes turned in slightly, heels in line with the hips. I'm going to scoot my hips forward, come down to my elbows, spread the elbows off to the side, and lay down flat on the floor. I'm going to hold on to the side edges of the mat, turning my inner arms up, outer arms down. I can actually tuck the shoulders underneath me. So as I squeeze the shoulder blades together on the back of my body, turning the inner arms up, outer arms down, I can start to walk the shoulders underneath and then lift the hips up. Once my hips are lifted, I have another opportunity to tuck the shoulders underneath so that the tops of my shoulders are aiming more to the floor. From here, you'll want to grab your block. You can have it on the low, medium, or high setting. But ultimately, we just want the tailbone supported here. So it's not against the sacrum. It's really kind of at the bottom of the buttocks, just barely holding the hips up. Then you can observe if there's more space to tuck the shoulders underneath now that the hips are supported. And then one leg at a time, we'll straighten the legs. Toes point up towards the ceiling. Just observe where your body is stretching the most. And release the hands. If you're feeling a little bit more open and stable today, palms face up towards the ceiling. If you're feeling like you're needing a little bit more grounding or support, maybe the emotions or the mind have been going, you can hold on to the side edges of the mat. But whichever pose that you're in here in Setu Bandha or Salamba Sarvangasana, there's this slight pressure and connection of the tops of the shoulders on the floor. From the upper arms pressing down on the floor, tops of the shoulders pressing down. See if you can lift your back ribs, lift the back of the body away from the floor. With every inhale and every exhale, try to soften the sides of the neck. Ultimately, you're going to feel a little bit more length happening in the back of the neck with the chin so close to the chest. This is beneficial. Starts to calm and soothe the nervous system. Jalandhara Bandha. It's kind of this chin lock position that we have when we're in these poses. This is where the chin comes to the chest, back of the neck becomes very long. It shouldn't necessarily be forced or create tension, but instead see if you can soften the throat, soften the neck. Now, if you're in the more supported restorative version of Setu Bandha, you're welcome to stay there through Shavasana. Otherwise, if you're in the inversion or you have the block under your hips, we'll start to come out and move into Shavasana, corpse pose. If you have the block under your hips, bring the feet in. You press the feet down, lift the hips up. Keep the tailbone tucking towards the calves as you bring your hips down to the floor. Rolling out of the inversion with control if you've been upside down. Take a few breaths here. And then we'll lay down for Shavasana. So you can either just lay down flat on the floor, or if you'd like some support underneath your head and your neck, you can go ahead and grab that. Just taking a few breaths here, letting go, feeling the weight of your body rest heavy on the floor. If you're generally managing some waves of depression or even trauma, you can use Shavasana, practice Shavasana with the eyes open and the gaze soft. Just observing the natural harmony of your breath without trying to change or manipulate it. Observe how the body moves with your breath. Noticing how the abdomen, how the rib cage expands and contracts. As the mind focuses on the breath, observe the space of your body. Notice if there's any tension being held anywhere in particular. As you scan your body from head to toes, to fingertips, just do a little inventory. If there is some tension anywhere in particular, you might even be able to attempt breathing into that space. If you feel comfortable doing so, gently lengthen your inhale and exhale. You should not feel forceful. And if it does, you can just move back to normal breathing. Gently lengthening the breath, slowing the pace of your inhale and exhale. If you did decide to stay in that Setu Bandha supported version, I would request that you Lift the hips, remove the blankets from underneath you so that your spine can lay flat on the floor. And slowly bring your hands to your abdomen. Take a moment to appreciate your body for all that it's done and all that it will do. Appreciate your mind for taking the time to practice and harmonize with your body. And then feel gratitude and acknowledgement for your heart, that organ in your chest that's dedicated to life. And slowly bend your knees with the feet flat on the floor. Let go of any tension in the spine. You can take your time coming up to a comfortable seated posture. Feel free to use the props around you to sit comfortably. As you come to a comfortable seated posture, bring the palms together in Namaskar, still with the spine lifting, face and eyes soft. I appreciate you all for taking the time to practice yoga today. Thank you so much for joining me and practicing with me. Namaste. Well, thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed today's class. I know it was quite active as we move into Virabhadrasana 1, Warrior 1 pose. But that's kind of my intention with these Wednesday morning classes, is that they are a little bit more active, a little bit more energizing, and essentially kind of mimics a little bit more of an advanced class, versus Saturday mornings will be more restorative, more foundational. So if you have any friends or family members that you'd like to share this with, then that's what I would recommend, is considering that the Saturday mornings are a little bit more supported, a little bit more into fundamentals, but these Wednesday classes definitely slightly more advanced than what I've been teaching on Saturday mornings. So thank you all for being here. If you have any questions at all, please, please, please reach out to me. You're welcome to speak up at the end of this video, or you can shoot me a private message and we can talk more there. But thank you for joining me today, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your morning and afternoon, and I hope to see you again soon.